Hello, everyone. I have to apologize. This is the first time I'm doing a live stream, so I'm not sure how everything works. So please, if you can hear well, let me know in the chat. Also, if somebody is having any problems with the hearing or everything else, if possible, also indicate in the chat. I am expecting Jim McKeeth to join me and moderate. However, I haven't heard back from him. I hope everything is fine with him. If I don't hear from him, I'll have to try to manage myself again, considering that this is the first time I'm doing this. I don't know how well I will do, but I will try. So, can everybody hear me? Fantastic. Yeah, it's time now for the event to start, and we have a barking doggy which announces it. Give me a second. Poppino, stop. Yeah? Sorry about that. I have two small doggies here, and they get excitable. There is echo. You guys hear echo? There is a problem with the audio. Finn is reporting echo. Okay. So, Finn, the problem may be only with you then, I'm not sure. So I'm still waiting to see if Jim, okay, yeah, he's not responding. He was supposed to join and moderate, but I hope everything is fine with him. I'll try to quickly call him and see if he answers. If not, I'll have to manage myself. Same as I managed the development of Visuino. Yeah, I'm calling Jim to see if he will join me. Thank you, Compact DIY. Yeah, it's rather messy and somewhat dusty in places workshop, but that's the nature of the beast. Yeah, unfortunately, Jim is not answering. If he joins. If not, not. Let me do one more try to reach him. If not, we'll have to do without him, unfortunately. Yeah, he seems to be unavailable at the moment. Well, I'll have to do myself. So now you guys can post questions in the chat. I have pre-collected some questions that we expect are probably interesting for most people. Let's see, since I'm first time here, okay, we have 25 participants. And I'll go ahead and start with the list of questions that Ron has collected for me. He has collected it from different people and stuff. And again, I have to thank Ron for everything he is doing to help me with Visuino. So the first question, how did Visuino originally get started, and what was the inspiration behind its creation? Well, I actually have covered this before in other interviews and articles and stuff, but the story is that I have first of all developed for quite some years OpenWire Studio, and OpenWire Studio is a product that is literally in perpetual beta because for me that's a lab where I experiment with new technologies and stuff, and where I test my components. I also test and experiment new concepts. So OpenWire Studio allows you to run code inside Windows, purely graphically designed. Yeah, I had it. Then 10 years ago, I was working on a project, and I usually work with very nice people for most of the projects. But when you are in the business for 20 years, occasionally you run into some unpleasant people. So those people were very unpleasant. I was working with them. My nerves were in very bad shape, and I was stressed. So I decided to relax myself and buy myself for Christmas Arduino kit. So I bought the Arduino kit expecting that, yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm going to connect some sensors. I like playing with sensors and microcontrollers. And then I'm going to program it and it's going to be fun. So yeah, connecting the sensors was fun. But when I tried to program it, it was very frustrating experience, to be frank. And it did not help my nerves as much as I had hoped. So then I suddenly started thinking, well, there has to be easier way to program those microcontrollers, right? There has to be some kind of visual tools where it is going to be fun, I'm going to relax, I'm going to enjoy. And I started looking around and searching for some tool to easily program the Arduino, and I couldn't find. So then I start thinking, well, okay, can I do something? I have the OpenWire Studio, maybe I can adapt it. And I started thinking, and I said, well, that may actually be possible. Why don't I try doing it? So one weekend, and it was a weekend, I remember, I sat down and literally within one day, I started in the morning with the OpenWire Studio. And in the evening, I had no version of the OpenWire Studio that was able to generate some simple Arduino code and just control some digital and IOs and analog. Read and print on the serial port, something like that. I mean, super simple. But that is how Visuino started. So that was the first proof that Visuino is going to work. Then in the next few days, I developed a bunch of components like servo and some simple math components, inverters, logical components. And by the middle of the week, and at that time, Delphi was celebrating its 20th birthday, if I remember correctly. So they had whole week live events with Jim McKeeth. They were showing all kinds of different things built with Delphi. And of course, I'm MVP with Delphi. They invited me to join. And as I joined and I was talking with them and talking about my Delphi libraries, uh, I also mentioned that I am working on Arduino, on ID, Visual ID for Arduino. At that time, it was not yet called Visuino. And they said, well, why don't you show us? And I right there, for first time showed it to the public. I mean, the first version. So that's how Visuino was born. And that was the inspiration of Visuino. I simply wanted something for myself. And then most of you probably already know the story. After that, I launched the public beta. I tried to keep it free for a while, tried to sponsor it with ads. It did not work. And I was forced to break it into a free version and commercial version so I can support the development. And that's how it all started and evolved. But that's probably enough about it. It's a bit longish story, but probably a bit more interesting for most people. The next question is, let's see, what is the background of Mitov Software team and how does that influence Visuino development? Well, the team largely consists of myself. In the past, when I was developing the Mitov software products, I have on occasions used some subcontractors. And there are some people that have valuable contributions to the project. Um, but yeah, most of the work is done by myself. I have been working on OpenWire for like already 30 years. the initial concept of OpenWire was born when I was back in the days when I was working at Rockwell about 30 years ago. And oddly enough, the initial version of OpenWire, which is the visual ability to connect components, was developed to parse code. At Rockwell, I was handling a very large code base, which was not necessarily very well documented and understood. So I needed code parsing tools that would visualize the codes and all of the relationships. So I was using C++ Builder at that time. And I developed OpenWire initially in C++ Builder to allow me to do that. And that's the origins of the technology. And that answers the question, how did it influence the Visuino development? I mean, I have been from the ground up finding ways of making software development easier, right? So instead of writing code, to give the people the option to fully develop all of that visually. And then after I had my components and libraries that were based on OpenWire, and they have their own long story, then as I mentioned earlier, I created OpenWire Studio, which is a standalone IDE, which uses OpenWire and allows you to run code under Windows. And then from there on came Visuino, and you know the rest already. So next question, can you explain the main components of Visuino interface and how they help in project development? I'm not sure how to answer this question, but let's switch to let me see how to do that. I'll start sharing the screen, and I'll select a particular window there. Hopefully everybody can see the screen. To make it easier, I will move the broadcast on the other monitor. So as you can see, I'm in the middle of already working on the next version of Visuino. So, and as a result, I'm recompiling, making changes, and I have errors. So you actually are seeing me right in the middle of my work. But now let's go over the main components and why I have developed them this way and how they influence, and make it easier for development. When I developed Visuino, I envisioned it that eventually it's going to be used completely by touchscreen interface. So although it's not quite ready for touchscreen usage, I have tried my best to design as much of it for touchscreen as possible. And yeah, you can use it with touchscreen and it works okay, but I'm working to improve it better. For quite a while, I did not have touchscreen monitors to test with. Now I have some touchscreen devices. Whenever I have chance, I will work more on the touchscreen. So the concept, first of all, is there are a lot of tools, including Delphi, where you have a component toolbar. I was mostly influenced by LabVIEW, to be quite honest, because LabVIEW has a hierarchical toolbar. The only difference in Visuino, and that I know that's a bit controversial, but I wanted to allow people to drill into categories to a single component multiple ways. So as a result, let's say if I have a inverter, as you can see, the invert component will appear under gates. It's also a digital component, and it's also a filter. So you can get to that component through different category. Of course, I have made fairly easy to use filtering. But again, the idea is you can very easily either search for component or navigate through the hierarchies and get to the component that you want. Once when you have gotten the component, you put it into a design area. Now in the design area, when I initially was planning Visuino, I took approach that's completely different than anybody else at that time. Uh, Node-RED, example, allows you to program microcontrollers, not necessarily very efficiently, but if I'm not mistaken, it allows that. And LabVIEW was experimenting with the same approach, as well as some others. Uh, they require you to drop and specify, as example, that you're going to control a digital channel. Then you specify the number of the channel and so on and so forth. I thought that this approach is very user unfriendly because here is what happens, right? On first glance, it sounds good, but when you start thinking about that, it doesn't make sense. So you want to drop the the digital pin as example, then you have to specify which pin. But in order to do that, you have to go and look up on the board and figure out what pins are there. I thought that in order for Visuino to be user-friendly and easy to work, it should present your whole board with everything that's available on the board, and then you decide what you do with this board, right? So instead of dropping a pin component and figuring out how to configure it, you have the board with all of the pins presented. They're already pre-configured and everything. They also literally document the board for you. So, I mean, even myself, I very often, when I look at a board, and even if I want to connect the I2C as example device to the board, I just look at Visuino and say, oh, okay, I2C on this board is, yeah, of course, everybody knows 4 and 5 on Uno or a Nano, but I can assure you that I don't remember off the top of my head on which pins I should connect the I2C on every single board that I have. So Visuino immediately shows me that. So it not only helps me when I program it, but it also helps me when I want to connect hardware. So that's the second concept that's in Visuino that hopefully helps developers. Of course, the next one is the object inspector. An object inspector, okay, that's nothing new. However, I did try to do a lot of new things in the object inspector. First of all, in recent years, I added icons, which makes it much easier to visually recognize what we're going to be adding and what we're editing. I added the concept of elements, and that's extremely powerful concept that's not typically normal for other development environments. And I'll show you even simple component like the analog value. Here again, I mean, it's a simple component that's supposed to provide you a value, and yes, you can clock it. Again, clocking is another concept. Let's see, I'm getting some feedback. Let's see what Ron is telling me. Okay, yes, he's suggesting answering questions from the chat. So let me just finish this one. This is going to be a bit longer answer, but we're going to actually cover some aspects of Visuino. And then I will go over a few questions from the chat, and then we'll continue if there is more time or desire with some other prepared questions. So we're talking about a concept. Yes, there is the concept of clocking, but also we can enhance this component by adding elements. As example, we can add set to value, which if we clock that value, will set that value. We can add ramp to value, which is going to slowly ramp to the specific value. This was set value state. So difference between set value and set value state. Set value, you can clock it, it goes to the value. Set value state uses digital. When it is true, it will go to the value. When it is false, it will return to the original value. So again, this adds the concepts of enhanced components with elements, which is another powerful feature. The next thing is, of course, yeah, we have a live map. We don't want to mention the code view, but we also have undo and redo, which are hierarchically, I mean, basically in a tree view form organized. And of course, we have functionalities like the build window here nowadays, the platforms manager, the libraries manager, and so on and so forth. So again, I probably don't express everything, and I hope I'm just showing my way of thinking and how I have designed the Visuino to be as powerful as it is. That's at least my attempt here. And again, please apologies for the code not properly compiling. The reason is that I'm making changes to Visuino at the moment, and you're looking at the next potential beta version. So let's see what questions we have at the chat. Teensy support of microcontrollers. Well, in Visuino, the Teensy controllers as controllers are fully supported. I am, however, not happy with the lack of audio support. So I have already gotten, I forgot, did I buy it myself or somebody sent me a shield, audio shield for the Teensy. So I plan to work on it. However, there are some really urgent things that I have to do in Visuino in order to be able to move forward. And you actually are seeing right at this moment some of that work as being done. I am reworking the way all the digital and analog channels are being generated. They're going to work in a new, much better way. That's the short story, and will make development of and mapping new boards easier. And the reason is right there behind me is a whole box of boards that are waiting to be added. However, I'm one guy adding all of that, and I have to spend periodically time to make my life more productive. So I have to spend, as example, a week in order to speed up my work going forward. And then in the following weeks to add much more boards and eventually end up adding more stuff, right? So that's what I'm doing. I'm simplifying at the moment the work. That's going to affect how boards are supported. Once this is done, I promise I will be working on the audio support for Teensy, which has been highly desirable. There is desire for LVGL support. I also want to add LVGL. I'm not sure if it will be added in the standard or in the Pro version only. I may add it in the Pro version only because, again, it's a very complex functionality. It's going to take me a long time to implement it, but it's a functionality that has to be done. And I also want to add the Ethernet support for Teensy. So that's all I can say about the Teensy. So let's see the next question by Brian. I hope that answered your question. If you have anything more specific about the Teensy, please clarify and I'll try to answer. Benjamin, that's the question I want to ask. Okay, LM35. What kind of problem you have with the LM35? Let's see if I can answer it live. So LM35 component, and we're gonna hook it to analog channel. So now I want to mention this is very good component, and I want to mention one of the new features which did not get highlighted recently. But there are components like exactly LM35 that require voltage reference. So in essence, this is an analog component that measures analog value and converts it to temperature, right? So you can get the temperature out. And normally all you need to do to get this component, unless I have messed up something, to get the temperature in Celsius is this. You connect analog pin to the analog input of the thermometer and the output of the thermometer to the stereo. If you want to convert it to Fahrenheit, you just need to check this checkbox, and instead of Celsius, it will be in Fahrenheit or instead of centigrade. Okay, let's not call it Celsius. Let's call it centigrade because, again, Celsius versus centigrade, that's interesting, separated question. So the voltage reference is an interesting one. Normally, a board, when you read from analog pin, you read using the voltage reference of the board. So the values are going to be between 0 and 5 volts for the Arduino Uno. And if you use something like Tinsy or what have you, it will be 0 to 3.3 volts. And I have added automatic configuration for the component to configure to the proper reference, voltage reference, from the board type that you're using. However, if you're using some kind of other analog pin, or if you have something else that affects the pin, you can overwrite the voltage reference yourself. If you use measurement based on, let's say, 3.0 volts as example, which is a bit standard, then you can specify it here, and then the component will use 3 volts, or let's say 3.1. 3.1 volts as voltage reference compared to the signal. And of course, you have to enable it in order to override the default one. If you disable it, it will use the default voltage reference for the board, and Visuino automatically sets that. So I hope that this answers the LM35 question. So the next question is by again by, let's see, okay, Ron has answered Benjamin. Benjamin is again asking about holding register. Okay, that's a bit more complex question, but I will show you how you can use TCP to send to a holding register. Benjamin, you have some interesting questions here. So, and I love it. I think this session is going more live questions rather than pre-recorded questions, which is the best type of session, in my opinion. So let's pick a board. As example, ESP32 dev board. Okay. And yeah, by the way, I hope everybody enjoys the new hints that I added in the last version. There are a lot of new things in this version of Visuino. So here, let's select the board, and we'll go to the Wi-Fi, and we'll add a TCP socket. And since you're talking about accessing, I presume you're talking about accessing a remote register, holding register. So we'll do TCP client socket, okay? And for that, we will use TCP client. Yeah, okay. TCP client protocol. And we'll hook the protocol to the TCP socket. You will have to set, I don't recall at the moment, the exact port for the Modbus. I plan to make the protocol to automatically configure the port. That's on my to-do list. I simply haven't had a chance to get to it. But actually, hopefully, I'll get to it in the next version. So you will not have to manually, but in any case, you have to specify the correct port. I'm going to put just temporary port. Please go and check out what should be the port number for the Modbus TCP. Then we need remote Modbus device. So this is going to be our protocol, and here we have our remote Modbus device. We connect the device to the protocol, and now you set read to write. Let me see. You are asking send the holding register. So you want to write into the holding register. Well, in this case, we'll look into holding registers, and let's say the holding register is let's say it's an integer holding register, and you can have some integer sign value. And to specify when you are going to send it, you can clock it at specific intervals. No, not this one. Yeah, this one. So we can clock it at specific time. Oops, I'm sorry, I connected it wrong. My mistake. That's what happens when you do it live. I connected to the wrong pin. So this will send the value, and this will clock it, and you can specify when you're going to write. And here in the holding register, you can specify which specific register you want to do. So that would be the address of the register. So let's say 16. And that's as offset from the beginning of the holding register addresses. I am planning to add the option to show the hex and so on and so forth. That couple of different standards of how addresses are listed in Modbus. That's another thing on my to-do list. But I hope that this answers your question. This should write into holding register. So please post if you have any further questions about that. Finn is asking the next question. With new sensors and hardware constantly emerging, are there any plans for tools or guidelines to help DIY and enthusiasts create third-party components for Visuino? Good question. I plan to write a tutorial. I did a tutorial in Blaise Pascal magazine years ago, but that was tutorial when the components were being written in Delphi. I plan to make tutorial, but before I do that, for the next release, I plan to try to make it even easier to make your own components. It's also already quite easy. People that have tried have succeeded, but I want to make it even easier. So before I post such a tutorial, I want to at least try to make the process even easier, so practically anybody can try to do their own components. And yeah, tutorials on that are planned. And my apologies, I have not gotten a chance to post anything until now, but hopefully that will change. So next question, disabling a new spins. Yeah, that's a suggestion by Stefan, but disabling unused spins may make it easier. Yeah, he suggests to hide effectively pins that are not used. I have considered doing that. I will have to experiment. Obviously, it's a lot of work adding each new feature. When I add it, it takes a lot of time. Not only to add the feature, but actually to polish it and fix the hundreds and thousands of bugs that happen when you add new stuff. So sometimes things go slow, but they go slow for a reason. I want to release a good quality product, right? Some people may ask why I don't release new versions more often nowadays. The reason is that Visuino has matured. It is very powerful tool, and again, in the early days of Visuino, I was making sometimes couple of releases a week. but each release was breaking stuff. And then I was going around fixing stuff. I was breaking more stuff. There were limited testing facilities. Now, when I do release, I have a dedicated computer right next to me, which is running right at the moment, where I do a full testing of hundreds upon hundreds of projects, making sure that whatever changes I make do not break stuff. As you have seen, rarely stuff gets broken. It's not possible with such high level of complexity and the amount of changes I have to sometimes do not to break anything, but I try to not allow, I mean, if possible, anything to slip through the cracks. Though every now and then something slips, unfortunately, but that slows the process. That means I have to very meticulously and carefully test everything, make sure there are no side effects, there are no issues. That slows the release cycles. I'm trying to speed up the release cycles, but at the same time, that's not going to happen at the expense of the quality of the product. So that hopefully I will enable eventually disabled pins to be hidden if after I test it I don't discover that it causes confusion or any other issues, because again I don't want to add features that are only going to confuse people or make them getting lost in the project. I want the project to be functional. Sometimes features that look great on paper, they don't work very well. So next question. So low-level programming in Visuino. Well, first of all, Visuino actually effectively is a very low-level programming code enough. What I mean by that is if you're good at coding, and if you go and study the code that is generated by Visuino, on first glance it looks like kind of big code. But the thing is that that code actually generates practically, in many cases, zero or almost no binary at all. And the reason is that those are templates that, as example, this one here, everything gets converted to constant. And by the way, just a fun fact, the reason there is more code at the moment, I have forced with a new command line option, or all of the channels on the board to be generated, so I can compile against them and discover any bugs because I'm redesigning the channels. This is just a fun fact. That's why the code you're looking at the moment actually is much bigger than normally will be there. But if you look at something like this big on first glance module, you'll discover that practically everything here, nearly everything, is just constants. And those constants, they're not going to generate any real code. They're just going to be constants that are going to be compiled as part of computations and stuff like that. So this whole thing here will generate just a few bytes of binary eventually. So not only that, but because I use shared like right here, shared Boolean fields, effectively, multiple components will use a single byte. So as you can see, this whole project actually will use a single byte, and not even a full byte. It will use 4 bits of RAM. So that's very low level optimization, okay? But that being said, if you use the professional version, furthermore, and that's a question that often been asked, and I'm going to use the opportunity to answer it, interrupts. So let's say I have a counter, and anybody who wants to ask about interrupts, here is your answer. So if I add a counter component, and you see that the counter has this flag, and this pin has this flag. So if I connect this counter flag pin to flag pin, that means this counter is going to use interrupts to count. So if I connect it to a pin that doesn't handle interrupts, like this one, okay, and disconnect this one. This will not use interrupts because this pin doesn't have dedicated interrupt. So the answer is that Visuino will automatically use interrupts whenever applicable. So you don't have to worry about that. And yes, Visuino will use interrupts. And finally, if you really want to go low level yourself, the professional version of Visuino, of course, includes the custom code component. And in the custom code component, you have, you can put defines, you can include files that you want to include. There are two sections, init and start. They both will generate the code in the setup section of the Arduino code. The init is intended for typically hardware initialization. Start is for post-initialization things like sending initial values, printing initial information, and stuff like that. So typically here in the init, you put off your begin code. And here in start, you put your initials, print messages, and send initial values to components and stuff like that. And finally, you have execute section, which will work two ways. If normally it will go into the loop, but if you clock the component instead of in loop, the execute section will be executed when you clock the component. So this allows you to write your own code and go really low level. So I hope I answered the low level question in detail. So next third party. For complex programming. Again, Visuino does allow complex programming. So, John, John, this was answered for you, for John Boone. I hope I answered the question. Please let me know if there are further questions. Ron is actually asking for everybody packet versus structure, and that's a very important question. I really have to do another tutorial on that, though I mention it quite often. So difference between packet and structure. In general, they do similar work, right? So packet and structure, they do kind of roughly the same work, but they're quite different. The packet component has header, typically, and it has checksum. So what it does, it ensures that if I send packet on one end, if there is any noise or disruption in the connection or whatever, the packet either will be received on the other end or it will completely fail. You're not going to receive some kind of partial packet or anything like that. So it ensures the integrity of the packet. I don't want to go into great details, but that's the point. It adds additional information. It sends more information in order to ensure that if I send a packet, this packet either will be completely received on the other end, and the other end will be sure that the packet is not damaged in any way, shape, or form, or the packet will be rejected on the other end. If any damage has happened to the packet, it will be discarded. Structure is different. Structure, whatever you structure and send on one end, is exactly the same way received on the other. And if any damage or disruption in the connection has happened, yeah, tough luck, right? So structure should be used only in connections that are ensured to be reliable and are ensured that whenever you send something in a packet form, gets received on the other end in packet form. Typical examples are TCP sockets. So if you use TCP socket, use structure, right? So TCP socket is going to ensure that. If you're using serial port, if you use TCP socket, use structure, yes. If you use serial port, use packet, because serial port can have disconnections and stuff. If you use LoRa, use structure, because there is no point of having overhead for LoRa. If you use, as example, CAN bus, which is also packet-based, yeah, use structure. Anything that ensures the integrity of the data being sent and ensures packet form, use structure. Anything that's stream-based and is not reliable, like serial port as example, use packet. Again, for the TCP, I have to check. Maybe for UDP you can use structure. For TCP, maybe you should use packet, because TCP, I'm not sure if it ensures the packet. It may break them into sub packets and stuff like that. So even in TCP, you may need to use packet. So that's the difference between packet and structure. Structure has one other valuable usage, so that very few people know about, and I myself tend to forget. And since we're on the topic of structure, I'm going to show that feature, or you can call it a useful side effect. So, yeah, unfortunately, when broadcasting, Visuino is typically not that slow, but when broadcasting, yeah, it's going slow. So, if I want to repackage something, let's say I have what should we try? Not very good examples. Oh yeah. So let's say I have 4 or 2. Let's say 2 8-bit values, and I want to packet them together into a single 16-bit value. So what I can do is I can make a structure of 2 8-bit values, and on the other side, I can make one 16-bit unsigned value. And now these 2 8-bit values will be joined into most significant and less significant bytes of the 16-bit value. So this allows me to restructure data effectively. So this is one usage of the structure, which is not typical. I mean, packet this will not work with packet. With structure, it will work, and it's a way to restructure data. So structure has more usages than just transmitting data. It can be used for shaping, effectively packaging your data. So that's structure versus packet. Swellington. Okay, he's offering to help. Yeah, Swellington is a great guy. He actually is, aside from Ron, is the only real contributor for Visuino. There are a couple of things that you guys all enjoy that are there thanks to Swellington. He helped me a lot. He did the initial prototype version for exporting and importing subdiagrams. I finished his work again. That's normal, but he did kind of the hard work. So made my life significantly easier. I had to do relatively limited amount of work after that. He also did quite a few components. I forgot the exact list of components, but he did a few components that are now part of Visuino. So thank you, Swellington. And he's a very helpful guy. He also has developed a few third-party components that are available on the site. And he has a YouTube channel. He hasn't been updating it for some time, but yeah, I'm sure he's quite busy. In any case, his channel is in Portuguese, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, if you speak Portuguese, definitely his YouTube channel is worth checking out. So let's see. Mark, I'm not sure I understand. Mark is asking, would like to see a place to put components in or on blocks. I'm not sure I understand the question. Again, I mean, there is subdiagrams, and subdiagrams in the professional version, you can put components in it, and then it forms a block that you can use in your main diagram or in other subdiagrams. I'm not sure if that's the question. So please, Mark, clarify the question because I really don't know. You mean no? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I misunderstood the question. So he's asking if we can put comments. That's a very good question, and that's something that is very high on my priority list to add. Unfortunately, I have never gotten the chance to add it, but I'm working on it. So yes, we'll have comments. Sorry, I misunderstood the question. My fault. Hopefully, Ron answered it a little bit better. So yes, I'm working to add the ability to have comments. Actually, it will be even more than that. Again, that's the same as what I mentioned with hiding the unused pins. I have to find a way to make it easy to use and not to be confusing. So I'm experimenting with different ways of adding comments. Hopefully you'll see them soon. If you need data security, okay. Yeah, Swellington is answering the question, and I can answer the question about data security and stuff. Let me see what I'm missing. That's an interesting suggestion by Kevin. So I have been considering myself adding comments right into the diagram, but Kevin is proposing something which I like. He's proposing a documentation tab. I like the idea. Actually, I like the idea. I haven't thought about that. So, Kevin, thank you for that. That's a suggestion I will keep in mind. And you guys, you should know my Skype is BMITOV. You can Skype me and bug me and remind me because again I work on a lot of stuff and sometimes I kind of forget something or forget how important it is. So next question is for the communication terminal FMX in Delphi. Yes, I have added the FMX terminal. I am right at the moment, right here next to me, testing a new version of the libraries that have the terminal. As soon as it passes my testing, which is very rigorous testing, similar to Visuino, I test my components for days and days on this computer here. It's dedicated for building and testing purposes only. Whole computer dedicated for that. As soon as I'm happy with them, I will send you the new FMX. But please remind me if you don't receive it in the next few days, bug me again. I'll send you a version. The FMX terminal has been added. Question regarding Raspberry Pi board type. Okay, how do you get to work on Raspberry Pi? I should post a tutorial on that. Unfortunately, there is so much. I mean, I'm literally working on Visuino day in and day out, and of course the libraries. So there is so little time to prepare and make tutorials. So here is the process, and it's a bit trickier process, and I haven't done it in a while, so I will run off memory. So first you build the Raspberry Pi project. Once the project is built and compiled, and I'll try to mock it. So let's see what we can do here to answer your question for Raspberry Pi. Yeah, this is very good question. So I select Raspberry Pi board. And now it probably will not compile, but again, because of the channel changes that I'm making. But that being said, after you compile, you will click on this open build folder. This open build folder will, once compiled, this open build folder will button will be available. If you click there, there will be a binary file. I forgot the exact extension of the binary file that you need to copy, executable. Then you have to use SFTP or some other way to upload the file to a directory on the Raspberry Pi. Then you need to open SSH terminal into the Raspberry Pi, or use the GUI on the Raspberry Pi, use command line prompt there, right? Terminal window there. Go to the folder where you uploaded the file, change the file permissions to make it executable, and then you start it. So the process is not simple. It's not like you just upload file and it works. No, you have to upload it to a folder, usually with SFTP. Then use either SSH or terminal window, change the file permissions to executable, and then you can run it. So that's the process of running the Raspberry Pi file. I hope I answered that, how you run it on the Raspberry Pi OS. Then now, Finn is telling that he has made a Modbus video on his channel. I myself have made quite few Modbus videos on my channel as well. So there are resources for Modbus. So Benjamin is thanking me and just informing that he's using the professional version at work. Well, I hope you really enjoyed, Benjamin. So, Stefan, let's see. Detailed info about what's new. Yeah, I agree. We try to put a change log, and if you go, that will require me to share different screens. So, but if you go to the number one, if you go to the download section on the Visuino website for the new version and for each version, we post pretty much a list of all major things that are changed. So there is a change log. Number one. Number two, in the new installer, at the end of the installation, automatically there is a checkbox that, if checked, will automatically open that page and will change you. It will show you that what's new and what has been changed. There are very often so many changes that I basically cannot even list all of them. But as you can see here, one of the interesting new changes, and it took me quite some work because I have gone through all of the components and stuff. We have the new hints, and that extends even to components, let's say. So if I go to DHT component, it will show me the specific module. So I have went and I have added all of the images and everything else, and I have done the same for the same for the shields. So yeah, not all. Oops, yeah, pretty much not all, but most of the shields. Too many shields. So most of the shields they have already their hints and everything else. So again, that's and if I add a shield, it will even be available here in the object inspector. So I try to make it as easy as possible for everybody, including myself, because even myself, I sometimes forget, okay, how did this board look like when I have to go and search for it in my drawer to test it. these hints help me enormously now. I can much easier go and search for it, and I'm exploring to expand that to even sub functions and stuff like that. But again, that's work in progress. So that's among some of the new things in this version. We highlight those, so there is, as I said, some level of changelog. But yeah, I try to highlight it as much as possible. So that's on the changelog. Uh, so works very well. Thank you, Miguel. Miguel is another great guy, and he's just helping answering some of the questions. Uh, Yeah, they're mostly answers. Can you explain what is the deal with the DS 1280 sensor? Oof. Okay, DS 1280. That's, yeah, in Visuino, almost all of the components, I write my own libraries for them. And the reason is that the Arduino libraries that exist out there, they're not very good. Many of them are blocking. Blocking means that if you start reading from one sensor until you finish reading from it, nothing else can work, right? Very often, sensor or communication will just stop your Arduino from doing anything else while working for seconds or on occasions even longer. So that's not acceptable for Visuino. In Visuino, nothing really should stop. Most of the libraries, as I said, I write them myself. That's why I'm so busy. I rarely use libraries that are written by others. There are few exceptions, and Servo obviously is one exception. I'm not going to write my own libraries for Servo. Same applies at the moment for NeoPixels, as example. So there are few libraries there. But one of the very, very few libraries that are not written by me that I use is exactly the DS1280. And as a result, the library poses certain challenges. But that being said, it's not that bad. So if I drop it here, and I have done tutorial on that, by the way. So typically what you would do is you connect the component to a digital pin, like here. And I have not tested the library when multiple components are connected to multiple pins, but typically the recommended way to use one-wire thermometers is to connect them to the very same pin. So typically you simply daisy chain them like this. And what you do when you daisy chain, each of them has address right here. And you simply specify the address of each of them. You poll the addresses, and again, I have shown tutorials how to do that, but you simply connect this to serial, it will report the address. So you get the address of each of them, and once when you have gotten the address of each of them, then you can daisy chain them, specify the address of each of them right here in the address property, and this will work. So that's how you deal in general, the recommended way to deal with them. So will I write my own library for the component one day? Yes. Is it unfortunately relatively low priority? Unfortunately, yes, because again, if you compare me spending, let's say, a week to write this component versus a week in which I write adding comments as example. Which one is more important? Well, everybody wants comments. On the other hand, even people that are not happy with the component, they still can use it. So yeah, it's not a great component. I don't like it. But it works for the time being, and until it becomes higher priority or I just find a gap to work on it, yeah, we'll have to deal with it. Or maybe somebody can help me and write a better library for it. I mean, if somebody is willing to help me on that, that will be fantastic. I hope that I answered the DS1280. So next question is Zalan is asking. Uh, the icons of the components. Well, I'm sharing. Okay, let's try a different type of sharing and to see how I'm creating the components. So let's see what we can share. We'll share the entire screen and don't get scared. So I'm sharing the entire screen. As you can see, I have a lot of tabs because I use a lot of web resources and stuff like that. And I'm working on multiple problems very often at the same time. While one thing a pause, I'm working on something else. But for the icons, first of all, let's go and explore the icons. I use Penshop Pro, and that's because I don't have that much money for more expensive editing products. So that's what I can afford. Again, giving a lot of Visuino versions for free is not necessarily the best business model, but hey, more important is people to use it and to enjoy it. I'm surviving. So let's take a look at one of the directories with maybe more components. Okay, let's say this chart directory. And here we have the icons, and they're PNG icons. And how do I do them? So I use the Penshop Pro, and Penshop Pro is very nice because it allows you to mix vector and raster layers. So that's what I typically do. I take and you can see here a lot of the components in action. So let's take a look here. Large icons. So let's take a look at, as example, something that has raster and text. Okay, don't like. Okay, let's say this component. So what I typically will do is I try to include the, if the component is made by some company, I try to include the logo of the company to give them credit for the component. So in this case, it's ST Electronics. I spent a bit of time trying to figure out how the image should be indicating the meaning of the component and at the same time shouldn't be too overwhelming. I don't always succeed. I try to indicate the interface, which in this case is raster layer, right? I can type text. I add the logo, I add some indication of the functionality of the component, which is a gyroscope and compass in this case, and I try to indicate the number of the component and stuff. So roughly that's how I create the components. And yes, it's a time-consuming process. Sometimes actually creating the icon for a component for some simpler components can take longer than writing the code for the component. But I hope I answered the question of how I create the icons of the components. So going back to my Visuino, let's and now and sharing the full and